And I'll just start this. Are you there? Hey, hey.
I'm over here. I'm down here on the blue track.
Broadcasting from Nashville, Tennessee, offering a glimpse inside the music industry, shedding light on things they don't want you to know, and exposing some of the industry's biggest secrets. You're listening to the Turned Up Podcast, presented by Real Sound Productions. Here are your hosts, Jake Jones and Robert Venable.
"33 years old, top of the world.
One of the most famous singers of his time and potentially of any time.
Laying in a pool of his own blood, 3 shell casings on the floor, in nothing but a blazer and a single shoe.
Just a matter of hours after he'd previously been out to dinner, whining and dining music colleagues, other musicians, roaming around the streets of LA in a brand new red Ferrari, flashing handfuls of cash, buying drinks after drinks.
This is the way the authorities found famed singer Sam Cooke on the morning of December 11th, 1964.
But before we get too deep into that, we should probably introduce ourselves.
It was so dark and brooding.
Let's bring it up a notch, and then we'll take it back down.
Sitting across from me in this magnificent warm space is my best friend in the whole world and colleague, co-host, producer, engineer, drummer, songwriter, singer, guitarist, pianist.
Don't let me stop you. But let me stop you.
Banjist.
Go on.
Banjo player, banjist.
Maybe just I don't play banjo. I've never played a banjo in my life.
Yeah, that's what you would like people to think.
Wait, okay, I have. I put it on my lap and played it like a drum. I was like tapping on the head on it.
Is Mr. Robert Venable. The guy has gold records, Grammy nominations, Dove Awards, #1 albums all over the place, as well as hit songs. And seriously, so successful, inspiring, and so good at what he does. One of the busiest men in Nashville, Tennessee. After recently getting fired from his cricket wing harvesting job, he is currently looking for new employment, which I was wanting to ask you, what is the last job you applied for?
In real life?
In real life.
The last job I applied for in real life, I think was as a joke. I remember being on vacation with my family somewhere like out of state, and we went into a place, and I thought it'd be hilarious to apply for a job because if you said all job applicants get a free meal, and I thought it'd be hilarious, like while my family was dining in this establishment, if I asked for a job application, and then when they asked for your home address, I put my real address being states away. I think it was like an Olive Garden or something.
How funny.
It was like one of those like fun places I like to eat, and thought, well, this would be a great little jaunt.
I have applied at an actual Olive Garden to try to get a real job and was turned down.
I had applied at an actual Olive Garden to get a real job and worked there for a while. Oh man, jokes over there. I'm going to ask you a random question in a minute, so prepare your mind for the world of possibilities that could come out of my mouth in a second.
Green.
Okay, so I was going to ask, what color is your toe? That makes sense. Jake Jones over there, one of the world's finest guitarists, singers, songwriters, producerists, mixists. Mixists. I'm going to start using that, actually, I think.
Mixists, rapists.
No, definitely not a rapist.
I'm thinking about getting into rap.
Well, that's completely different than rapists, if you write that down. Comedists. The dude has awards on his wall of the studio for #1 Billboard charting songs that he's co-written and co-produced and mixed and done all the things, played guitar and sang on, and Billboard charting songs. Like right now, you can look at the Billboard charts and see a handful of songs that you, Jake, have had your hand on somehow or another.
If you have really small hands.
Or really big ears, you could hear them as well. Or just regular size ears. Don't want to discriminate. But I was going to ask you, I've been meaning to ask you this for a while, and I feel like since you and I have this friendship and we're at the spot in our lives, I can ask you without fear of judgment type thing. When was the last time that you accidentally used the restroom in your pants? Number 1 or number 2? Doesn't matter.
Well, here we go. I was 30 years old. It was, listen, I'm not even going to go into the story. I have one word of wisdom for every human being listening to this podcast right now. Yes, I'm talking to you. Never trust a fart.
At our age, you can't. You just can't do
It's gross.
I set you up for that one. You never know what could happen. Anyway,
Man, you're not living if you haven't been out at Walmart and just had like a, like, all right, I'm down this aisle all by myself.
No judgment zone.
And, well, ending this shopping spree prematurely.
Add this one thing to the list of things I need to get from Walmart: clean undies. I'm just going to go try these on real quick. Man, I think I set you up for that one. But I think that kind of sets the tone for what we're about to talk about, as far as maybe this episode is not as kid-friendly as our previous ones. I mean, it's not going to get too bad to where you're going to have to turn it off. But I mean, it depends on...
It's not explicit.
No, we're not going to be explicit. We're still have our clean rating. However, this is going to be a murder investigation, along with some conspiracies and stuff like that. So depending on how old your children are, if they're listening, and how good of a parent you consider yourself, just a forewarning, we're going to keep this lighthearted, but still there are going to be some moments in here where we talk about, obviously, a death and gunshots and
blood,
alcohol use, and an adult profession.
Yes.
So
you've been warned.
Now is the time to find that Teletubbies podcast that you've been waiting to listen to, and maybe start it now and then come back to this a little later while you're doing yoga or, whatever.
Wait, why are you pointing at me to leave the room, Robert?
Because this is for mature audiences. This is for more mature audiences.
I thought I was your co-host. I'm supposed to be a part of this one.
There are parts of this you can't hear, Jake.
Okay, fine. Hang on. I'm going to go make myself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
You just ate a peanut butter sandwich. Oh, this one with jelly. Got it. Come back.
Do you want any Teddy Grahams?
I have a bowl of them here. So I ate them all. Yeah, I do need those.
Okay, cool. Be right back.
The chocolate chip ones.
Who am I kidding?
All right, so you probably heard, if you've gotten this far in, unless you automatically skip the first few minutes of our podcast every week, we had an intro here that we have to figure out how we got there.
So this story is about Sam Cooke. And truly, it feels a little bit like you ever played the game Clue?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I always guessed the candlestick. That was like my first go-to. No matter what clues have already been revealed. I'm like, he did it with the candlestick.
Because who gets killed with a candlestick?
Everybody in the game Clue. I don't know, I guess, maybe.
And on the surface, the story looks like it pretty well is an open and shut case. And the jury felt the same way.
Man, it took them 15 minutes to figure out that it was, a justified homicide.
Exactly. But the further you start digging into it and kind of researching, the more the details start to get a little muddy. And it's quite a fascinating story. So fascinating that we are not, by no means, we are not the first podcast to cover it. And even Netflix recently released a documentary surrounding the death of Sam Cooke.
Yeah, it's called The Two Killings of Sam Cooke. And it's... you can watch it right now on Netflix, and there are other ones that you can watch as well if you dig deep into the internet archives.
Before we go any further, who the heck is Sam Cooke?
Sam's got that name that everybody's like, oh yeah, I know Sam Cooke. Like, what song does he sing? I don't know. But everybody knows the name. They just don't know how they know the name. But I guarantee you know a handful of his songs, at least.
Probably, well, my favorite is Change is Gonna Come.
Yeah, Change is Gonna Come.
First heard it as the kind of hidden track or final track on a Gavin DeGraw record.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's just Gavin DeGraw sitting in front of a piano singing this song, and you can hate on that singer all you want, but listen to that song, and the guy's got some gospel chops. Beautiful song. I was born by the river. And then, of course...
Oh, one of my favorites is Wonderful World. It's... don't know much about I don't know.
History.
Yeah, fill in the blanks. Don't know much about...
don't know much biology.
That's right. I don't know the words, but I know the song.
Don't know much about a science book.
Don't know much about the French I took. I remember that
Doesn't
part.
know the words.
I knew that part.
But I do know that I love you. And I know that if you love me too.
I'll just keep doubling your parts.
What a
Wonderful world it would be. Yeah, that was one of his... I think that one's used in a lot of movies.
We should start a band.
I don't think it'll ever work.
He's got tons of hits. In fact, Sam Cooke had 30 plus top 40 hits.
Yeah, between 1957 and 1964, so like a 7-year period. That's a pretty good track record, and it also, I mean, contributed to numerous works with like Aretha Franklin and Bobby Womack, Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye, like all the huge hitters of that time.
And we're not even talking about worked with. This guy was instrumental in us even knowing that those vocalists exist.
Oh yeah. He straight up, at least Bobby Womack, for instance, was one of his backup singers, and maybe a little more tied in than that than we think or would like to know.
As we'll get to
later. Yeah.
So this is still February and still Black History Month. And last week we had on the legendary J.T. Carter of the Crests, founding member.
Oh yeah.
Responsible for the song 16 Candles.
I hate to be that guy, but I've
song.
listened to our own podcast like 3 times this last week because that was so good.
It's a great episode. And actually, we're speaking with JT about some other things as well, which we can't talk about right now, but it's exciting.
And you're like, the response that we got from you guys from last week's episode just was awesome. So big things are in the works for JT, and can't wait to share some of those with you.
So JT, what is special about him, and what's also special about Sam Cooke, is that they were both African-American men who rose to fame in the 1950s at a time,
The same time.
pre and during the civil rights movement, and really pushed the envelope and helped really destroy the barriers that were causing segregation in the United States. And
Right.
I say that without being naive. I know that race, unfortunately, is still something that we battle to this very day. Racism specifically, and it's a shame. But all that being said, here's another man this week who was actually involved in the civil rights movement, worked with Martin Luther King as well as
Malcolm X,
Muhammad Ali,
Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali. Yeah. All these people who were very instrumental in breaking down walls and causing a movement. He became very tied in with, to the point of some legal stuff. We'll get into that in a little bit. We should probably take a step back, tell the story of how Sam Cooke became Sam Cooke. Sam Cooke without an E to Sam Cooke with an E at the end of Cooke.
Yes, so Sam Cooke, from what I understand, really kind of joined his first band, vocal band, when he was 6 years old.
He was a kid. The fifth of 8 kids in his family, by the way.
And just talent from a young age. Started singing around when he was 14.
Gospel groups, yeah.
And really came up as a gospel singer. His father was...
He was the pastor of a Church of Christ.
Wow.
Yeah, so like Church of Christ is a denomination of Christianity in which there's not a band or a choir that sings, but the whole congregation just sings together a cappella, which in my experience leads to really cool musical upbringing as far as establishing harmonies and hearing like the actual vocals working together, with which, as we talked to JT last week, is a big part of coming up with like the doo-wop movement and coming up with those harmonies and like the parts that stack up for the lead singer. And Sam is already on that track.
And if you have not heard any of Sam Cooke's songs, pause this podcast right this second. Go to iTunes Music, go to Spotify, wherever you listen to music, YouTube, and just punch in Sam Cooke, Cooke.
Right.
And you'll instantly recognize his playlist. But the guy's voice is satin.
It's ridiculous. And at the time of his death, he was 33. So a lot of this was happening from about the time he's 26 years old, when he hit really, really hard on the top mainstream music charts. And he just sounds just more mature than he should for the age of 25. But it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was born Sam Cooke without an E at the end, by the way.
Yes, Cook. Sang in a few different gospel groups, eventually joining the Soul Stirrers. That was his first kind of breakout.
More recognized group.
He replaced their former lead vocalist, and something that was unique about the Soul Stirrers is these young ladies rushing the stage just to get a glimpse of Samuel Cooke.
Well, Sam Cooke liked to take care of himself and the way he looked, his appearance, and every time he made any appearance, he made sure he was on top of his game. He was wearing the nicest clothes. He had his hair slicked back, and he kind of just reeked of like sensuality. Even on the gospel scene, like he was just, he had that glimmer in his eye and the smile, and like I picture like the little light flare every time he opened his mouth, and like a toothpaste commercial. Yeah. But the ladies loved him, and he loved the ladies. He actually
loved the ladies a little too much.
A little too much. He ended up having 3 different children from 3 different women.
I heard reports that it was as many as 6.
Ooh, well, I know for sure 3, but 6 is even more than 3.
From all over the place. He did eventually marry one of the kids' moms.
Yeah.
Barbara.
Yeah, that was his second marriage, actually.
Okay.
He had another marriage, didn't have kids with, but she unfortunately died in a car accident after only a couple of years of marriage. It went really quickly.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll get to that too. But he added, at this point, he added the E to the end of his name. He's hitting with the ladies, hitting in the music industry, and he's like, I'm going to add the E to the end of Cooke because I think that's more sophisticated and kind of separates like this new beginning of switching from gospel music into mainstream music.
So he was singing with the Soul Stirrers and decided to branch out and try doing some mainstream or secular music. And that was really shunned within the gospel music community.
Yeah.
And so he actually came up with a moniker, who was, what was it, Daniel?
Dale Cooke.
Dale Cooke.
Without an E.
And that was his pseudonym to release his secular music. But the thing is, the man's voice was unlike any other. It was completely unmatched, still to this day. And as a result, he was found out instantly.
Yeah, that didn't take long.
So he was able to garner the permission from his current label and band to go ahead and do this, even though it was unheard of, and they were not happy about it. The gospel community in general, they were like, "Why are you doing non-gospel music?"
Right.
It not godly. But he did it anyway, and
he did it well,
and he did it very well. Ultimately, it was a disagreement because I believe he was covering another song by another gospel artist to release as a non-gospel track, had a huge falling out with his label, and they wound up parting ways, and he became the Sam Cooke that we know.
Right.
And eventually going on to release songs like You Send Me, Cupid, Chain Gang,
Twisting the Night Away. They're so good. I mean, song after song. And if you just go on iTunes or Spotify or whatever you listen to and listen to these music compositions, you'll recognize them immediately.
So Sam Cooke, not only was he a phenomenal singer for his day, but he was also an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And especially in the late 1950s, early 1960s, a black man trying to come into an industry like the music industry and take over and make some of the big moves that he made was unheard of.
Yeah, and he was given the advice and eventually heeded that advice and was like, you know what? He's going to start his own publishing company, which means he gets more power over his music and how it's released and more of the money as residual income from it. And so he did that and did that with a partnership with J.W. Alexander, another music executive / friend of his that's he worked with in the past. And they formed SAR Records. Now, Sam at the time said he was doing this, A and B, for the power and control of his music and the money, more of his own money. But C, he wanted to give back to the gospel artists in his history where he came from as a way of providing to them at a lesser cost or sometimes no cost, the ability to record their gospel albums, at no charge or discount or whatever, and kind of get them some exposure that they needed that they probably couldn't get without that.
And again, I just want to keep stressing, this is not 2019. This is 1950 whatever. And if you were an African American trying to make it in the music industry, you had all odds against you. And this man looked at his power and didn't say, oh, well, I made it too bad for everybody else. He said, how can I use my power and clout at this moment to help other African Americans succeed? And
African American guys in general in the music industry, a lot of them weren't allowed to have their own record company or publishing company. Or it was frowned upon if you even tried doing that because the mob and the mafia had their hand in so much of this.
The plot thickens.
Oh, it's already starting now. We're starting to add this emulsifier in there and stuff's happening. But the mob and the mafia have their hands in this. They're making so much money off of kickbacks from the industry, and they're involved in the music industry, not because they like music, but because they like money. And the music and entertainment industries are bringing in so much cash in LA and New York that they need their hand in it somehow. So what they did was started coming up with their own publishing companies, their own booking agencies, and they demanded that they do this stuff and then you pay them for their services at some ridiculous price. Some of it's money laundering, a way of getting rid of their cash and bringing in other income to replace it. Some of it is just a business opportunity for them. But they were involved in all the major labels, and Sam kind of wanted to sidestep that a little bit.
And so he did. He starts up this record label and says, I am not going to pander to the mob. I'm not going to do what they say. That was not his purpose. He wasn't just simply trying to get rich and famous. He had other ideas, and in the process really upset a lot of very powerful, dangerous men.
And put him on the radar for a lot of people like, okay, what is this Sam Cooke guy doing? And some people started to see him as making black empowerment moves, which again, think of late 50s, early 60s. That's not allowed. Whenever a movement happens or something starts rising above the rest, people start freaking out and like, okay, hey, things are happening and we don't know what's happening. In such a racially charged community and situation and era, to be a black male that's causing such a big movement definitely puts you on a radar. And that's what he was doing.
And at the time, there were several black men who were topping this list of powerful men who were starting to make big moves and changes. Probably at the top of it, I think anyone would say Martin Luther King Jr.,
Malcolm X.
Right, you had the World Heavyweight Championship.
So that's an event that happened February of 1964, February 25th, 1964. Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay, was fighting, but this is where all these people came together and were started to be seen together as like a network. Like, okay, wait a second. How does Jim Brown, the running back from the Cleveland Browns from 1957 to 65, like he award-winning playmaker, but also taking huge steps and breaking down barriers for racial equality. So Jim Brown, Sam Cooke, Cassius Clay, Malcolm X were all showing up together, including when Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay, wins the fight. He's over there yelling into the microphone, Sam, come over here, come up here. And Sam Cooke comes up to the ring and like, no, stay back. And like, Sam's like, what? So they all come together and like they're standing there like, this is my man. Everybody needs to listen to Sam Cooke's music. He's coming up. He's the big thing right now. Like, okay, wait a minute. All of these people this is becoming a thing. This is becoming an alliance, a huge alliance. And all these people together, we need to start keeping tabs on what's going on here. Something is happening.
And you had America split so hardcore right now. You had people who were like, we should all be equal. And you had people who were still saying, no, we need separate water fountains.
Exactly. Not even that, but stand on separate sides of the room, ride separate buses, ride separate parts of the buses. And it was still legal in a lot of places for that to happen. And that's just what it makes me sick, but whatever.
So what happens at this championship?
Okay. Muhammad Ali wins. Cassius Clay wins. they had this big thing, and like they're all seen together, accused of being like this huge alliance. Not verbally, not on paper, but behind the scenes, government's starting to see what's going on. So the FBI starts to actually surveil them under the leadership of President J. Edgar Hoover, heading that investigation. They started like, tapping their lines and putting bugs in their houses and keeping tabs on where they were, if they were meeting with each other, what was happening, because they saw it as such a threat. And Cassius Clay changed his name from Cassius Clay being a slave name, to Muhammad Ali.
I want to pause this story right here.
Okay.
Because I want to come back to it.
Okay.
So here it is, February 25th, 1964, and the FBI, these FBI informants are there, surrounding them.
Oh, yeah.
Investigating.
Yeah.
For some reason. We know that they were suspecting them of maybe conspiring, whatever it was. Here are these powerful black men at a time when there's this uprising of African Americans saying, you're not treating us fair and that's not right.
Right.
So let's pause this.
Okay.
And let's go to the night of December 10th, 1964. So same year.
Matter of months later.
Let's begin the story we started
at the beginning of the episode.
At the beginning of this episode.
We'll do that right after this break.
So here it is, December 10th. Now, if you'll remember, at the beginning of this episode, we started December 11th at 3 or 4 a.m.
Right. Let's go back to the night before, the beginning of the evening.
9 p.m. So we're at Martoni's Italian restaurant in L.A. Everyone has their eye on the 33-year-old Sam Cooke wearing say that for me.
I think that's a Side d'Ivoire.
Side d'Ivoire suit.
Yeah.
Very nice suit. Sam was having dinner with music producer Al Schmidt and his wife, Joan, Schmidt's wife. Guest after guest were stopping by the table to say hello to the singer and wish him well. He'd already had a handful of martinis, his drink of choice, when he was pulled away from the table to the bar. His food hadn't even arrived yet.
Yeah, and once the server actually brought their meals to the table, Al Schmidt went to go get Sam and found him laughing it up, having a gay old time with a group of friends and his music business colleagues, standing at the bar, having a little chit chat. Sam was buying that evening, looked at Al, flashed a wad of what appeared to be thousands of dollars.
Very important detail.
Yeah, pay attention to this. So pulls out a wad of cash, thousands of dollars, which at that time is tens of thousands of dollars to us, essentially. Smiled and said to him, "You guys go ahead with your meals." And that fact about the $1,000 was later proven because earlier that day, Sam had withdrawn $5,000 from his safe deposit box from his bank, which in our equivalency would be 50 grand.
50 grand.
In cash that he had with him at this
And he's
restaurant.
waving it around.
Yeah, just holding it up in this.
For all to see.
Exactly.
So at a booth near the bar, a young 22-year-old female was sitting with 3 other dudes and caught Sam's eye. One of Sam's guitarist friends offered to introduce the two, which Sam had recognized her, had seen her before, and really wanted to meet her. Her name was Elisa Boyer, and if you've heard the story surrounding the death of Sam Cooke, then you'll recognize that name. Before long, the two of them were cozied up in a booth together, having a wonderful chit-chat and more drinks.
Yeah, he never actually ended up going back over to the Schmidts to have his dinner at that table, but we'll get to that too. It's 1 a.m. now. Sam and Elisa have pretty much left Martoni's in Sam's brand new red Ferrari, headed to a nightclub called PJ's in Los Angeles, where they were going to meet the Schmidts because he had said, "Hey, I'll meet you at PJ's later around 1," but they didn't even leave until 1. So by the time they got there, the Schmidts were already gone. So they're sitting at the bar having a drink. This is Sam and Elisa, and Sam got into a heated argument when a guy, like just a random guy from the bar, started coming on to Elisa, kind of hitting on her. He didn't like that. And so they got a little heated, a little loud, bowed up a little bit. And Elisa's like, hey, let's just go.
So they were there for about an hour, and Elisa had asked Sam, supposedly, to take her home.
Sure.
So it's 2 a.m. now, and they leave. So according to Elisa, Sam was racing down the Santa Monica Boulevard, in his Ferrari, totally against her will. She wanted to go home, and he apparently had other plans. He pulls onto the freeway, driving like a maniac. She later told police that she'd asked again to be taken home, but Sam said, quote, "Don't worry now. I just want to go for a little ride," end quote. He played with her hair and told her how pretty she was.
So around 2:30, 2:35 in the morning, this is now December 11th, they got off the 101 at Figueroa Street near LAX Airport. Elisa asked again to be taken home, but Sam drove straight to the Hacienda Motel, which is kind of a sleazy, skeezy $3 motel found at 9131 Figueroa Street in Watts, where the sign said, quote, "Everyone welcome," which in those days was code for blacks can stay here. And he got out of the car, walked up to the glass partition at the manager's office, while Elisa remained in the car.
Another important detail.
So he's going in to register under his own name, his real name, Sam Cooke with an E, and talked to the clerk, 55-year-old Bertha Franklin. Now, Franklin saw that Sam wasn't alone, had a guest in the car, looking over his shoulder, seeing Elisa sitting in the Ferrari, and told Sam he'd actually have to sign in as Mr. and Mrs.
Now, you have to understand something. Sam Cooke was not anonymous anywhere he went.
He was huge in the country and world in the music scene. It's like you'd see Taylor Swift, and Taylor Swift signs into a hotel and says, "Hi, I'm Taylor Swift." You're like, "Yes, you are."
Yeah. So, and so this, we have to assume, I don't know, I feel like it's safe to assume that this hotel manager knows who Sam Cooke is.
Sure.
And sees a young lady in his car, and is very well aware that this is not his wife, and the type of hotel this was. I think anyone could have assumed, without knowing any details,
what kind of stuff happens at a hotel like this.
Well, and what kind of woman this possibly was.
Sure. And Miss Bertha, 55-year-old front desk manager of this motel, which charges $3 a night, which is about finding a hotel for $25, essentially, these days. Like, you're like, oh, okay, so there's probably a bed in there, but I don't know if anybody sleeps. She's accustomed to seeing younger, beautiful ladies there.
In fact, was once a younger, beautiful lady herself, and I'm not talking about her appearance necessarily.
She was a lady of the evening, and was rumored actually to still kind of manage ladies of the evening. But yeah, we'll get to that.
She a prostitute.
Yeah, okay, there it is. And managed other prostitutes. Okay.
So to pick up where we left off, so she tells him, "Hey, you're going to have to sign as Mr. and Mrs. The reason for this is so that nobody gets in trouble. Can't say, oh, yeah, I knew that there was a prostitute in her Dawn signing in. She could say, oh, no, this is husband and wife.
Sure, exactly.
So Sam parks around back of the motel. Elisa Boyer claims that Sam dragged her into the room, pinned her on the bed, and started to rip her clothes off. She says, quote, "I knew he was going to rape me," end quote. That's what she told the police. So she goes into the bathroom, tries to lock the door, but the latch is broken, tries to get out of the window, but it's painted shut. So she comes out of the bathroom, and Sam was already undressed. So he needs to relieve himself, steps into the restroom, and Elisa Boyer, wearing nothing but her slip and a bra, grabs her clothes, takes off running.
Right. She doesn't just run aimlessly. She goes to the front office again. So she runs back around the corner of the motel, starts knocking on the glass of the office, but Miss Bertha Franklin does not respond. So Elisa just keeps on running for another half a block or so, where she just drops the pile of clothes and entangled clothing, that she grabbed from the hotel room, which apparently included some of Sam's clothes, which she just left right there on the ground, puts it on her clothes, runs to a payphone nearby, and calls the cops.
So Sam steps out of the restroom, notices that this beautiful young lady is missing, along with some of his clothes, including his pants, where his wallet with $50,000.
Give or take. He had to buy dinner.
This is true.
For the Smiths. And some drinks, a lot of martinis.
So, and I say $50,000.
5,000
for all intents and purposes.
Sure, but so let's say he had a really good evening and it's down to 4,000. That's a lot of that's 10 grand he spent that night on the town, which is not unheard of for celebrities these days. But yeah, keep going.
So that's missing. Naturally, he freaks out. He runs out of the room. Now, we have to remember he's had a lot to drink at this point.
Yeah.
He's wearing nothing but his sport coat and one shoe as he's frantically looking for Elisa. He's calling her name, eventually gets back into his Ferrari and drives around to the front of the motel and bangs on the front office door where Bertha Franklin is inside. Is the girl in there? He yells. When Franklin says no, Cooke begins to ram the locked door. Eventually, the frame breaks through, and he comes busting in and grabs Franklin's wrists, allegedly, and asks her, where's the girl? Where is she? I know you know where she is. Where is she?
Right, because, moments before that, when he was trying to find his clothes, he looks out the window, sees Elisa running down around the corner and towards the office. So I guess he just assumed that's where she went to find rescue, like hiding in the office somewhere and Bertha's protecting her. Now,
I'm just going to interject some conjecture here.
Okay.
But if Sam drove, let's say they left at 2 a.m. from PJ's.
Right.
And drive to La Hacienda, which is 30 to 35 minutes away.
Yeah.
That's pretty intentional. He didn't have a cell phone with GPS. He knew where this was. He had been there before. He knew what kind of place this was.
Right.
Possibly knew or recognized Bertha Franklin and knew what kind of woman she was, knew that she had other women working for her, and had reason to believe that she had gone into the front office. It wasn't just random.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, he went around there. But if you think about this, Bertha Franklin outweighed, even though she was a lot shorter than Sam, outweighed him by a good 30 pounds and told police, he fell on top of me. This is a quote, by the way. He fell on top of me. I tried to bite him through the jacket, biting, scratching, and everything. Finally, I got up when I kicked him, and I ran and grabbed the pistol off the TV, and I shot at close range 3 times. End quote.
One of those 3 shots did hit him, and that's the shot that mattered. Yeah. It entered his left side, went through his left lung, and then his heart, and then his right lung. According to Miss Franklin, his final words were, "Lady, you shot me." And then he fell back. She says that he continued to try to attack her, at which point she grabbed a broom.
Yeah, apparently a very flimsy broom because it broke with the first hit.
Yeah, and she hit him, and that was it.
Yeah, the cops showed up around 4, interviewing everybody involved and kind of cleaning up the mess. But by 6 in the morning, Sam's wife, Barbara, was meeting with the press, trying to protect her kids from the reporters and all the people, the fans, and just curious spectators who are starting to show up at their house. And just what? I don't know what's going on. I've only been told this, but I have kids. This is my personal spot. You guys leave.
Yeah. So this was a very high profile death. Sam Cooke being who Sam Cooke was.
Right.
So they wasted no time looking into this. 5 days after his death, per the coroner's inquest, Elisa Boyer and Bertha Franklin recounted their stories in a hasty proceeding that barely allowed Sam's lawyer only one question.
I know, dude. Any trial, especially for a murder or homicide, where it's very obvious a homicide, there are 3 shell casings and the person who admitted to shooting the other person, and the other person's dead. And quite a story to back that up with the whole, accusation of rape and kidnapping and all this stuff by Elisa. This seemed like these days that would go on for months, if not years, of investigations and interviews and trying to find other recounts or visitors or people, which I'm guessing would be pretty hush-hush at a motel like that, who would come and say, I was there and I saw this happen. But that would go on for months and months and months. And they said that this one was nothing like that.
And test results showed that his blood alcohol level was 0.16. And I know today .08 is the legal limit in most places.
Right, but and this is also blood alcohol level, I mean, a couple hours after he had left PJ's. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, I mean, he'd been alive for a while, most of that 2-hour period, and working off some of that blood alcohol, blood level, alcohol level. But
so he had a lot to drink.
so if it's gone down to 0.16, it's still too much to be driving a red Ferrari around anywhere. But yeah.
So his credit cards were missing. All they recovered as far as money goes is there was a money clip in his jacket pocket with $108. But it took the jury 15 minutes?
15 minutes, yep.
To come back with a verdict ruling that it was a justifiable homicide, that Bertha Franklin shot and killed Sam Cooke out of self-defense, really in an act to protect her own life.
Right. And this was a big deal. Like we were saying, he's on top of the game, on top of the world, and making moves, especially for the African-American culture, like just making a name and a statement and starting this huge empire, breaking new ground, which was awesome, but not everybody thought so. But there were over 200,000 people who took to the streets in LA and Chicago, where he's from, just to mourn his death. That's a lot of people.
I know there were even thousands.
Yeah.
I know that there were even thousands of people that lined up just to view his body.
Celebrities.
He had 2 or 3 funerals.
Several. And they had glass. It was open casket, open viewing. But they had like a glass pane so you couldn't touch his body or get too close to it. But kids and elderly people, and there were government people, there were celebrities and other singers, and lots of famous people and family members and friends and everybody you can think of, old or young, black or white, showing up to mourn his loss and to view his body.
Wow.
But it doesn't just stop there.
So why are we telling you all of this? You could go on Wikipedia and read most of everything we said. Maybe
Some of it.
Not in as much detail, but you could find out pretty well that one night he was out hanging out and was shot and killed by Bertha Franklin.
And that's the end of the story.
While he was out with Elisa Boyer.
Right.
But there's a lot more to this story than meets the eye, and that's what we want to talk about now.
Yeah, it doesn't just end there. So there are a lot of conspiracies and alternate theories behind why Sam Cooke might be dead, behind his murder, or just regular homicide that's justifiable according to a juror of 7 people within 15 minutes. So Peter Gorolnik, one of the authors of Sam's biographies, says that in the black community, quote, there is not a single person who believes that Sam Cooke died as he is said to have died, killed by a motel owner at a cheap motel, end quote.
So this is really where the story takes off. This is where our story begins, and where it really starts to take an interesting turn. So earlier we were talking about the World Heavyweight Championship with Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali, bringing Sam Cooke up on stage, and this is where FBI shows up. Yeah. They're investigating this group of men.
Malcolm X involved as well. Jim Brown, the former NFL player, also involved.
And it's during this time that Cassius Clay changes his name to Muhammad Ali.
Right.
And, but shortly after Sam Cooke's death, literally just a couple of months, some interesting things start to take place.
Yeah, so February 21st, 1965, just a matter of 2 months, about 8 weeks after Sam Cooke was shot and killed, Malcolm X was shot and killed. And he was one of those handful of guys that the FBI had their eye on.
Something about Sam is that he really wanted to start a movement, right? An empire. Asked Jackie Wilson and James Brown to put all their money together and start a label and booking agency. The Mafia had their hand in all the labels at the time. We talked about that already. And they started to call Sam to get a piece of his pie. And Sam said no.
Started to scare Sam a little bit. Actually, Sammy Davis Jr. even called up Sam and said, hey, you need to listen to these guys. They're serious. And Sammy Davis Jr. already knew that the mob and mafia had their hands so deep into the pot of money in this industry, and just suggested that Sam, just give in, let them do this. This is how it has to be done.
So one day, Sam gets a call that there had been trouble at his house and needed to get home immediately. Gets home and finds out his son Vincent had drowned in the pool while Sam's wife had left him less than a minute.
Yeah, just went inside, which is very sad. But this destroyed him. This, as it should and would have any father or mother. But it just started to also take a toll on his marriage, because Sam started blaming his wife, Barbara, for the incident, and as well as himself just for not being there, being on the road so much and being involved in the music industry. And he took it very, very personally. And Barbara, by the way, this is his second marriage. We talked about that. His first marriage was to a woman named Dolores, who was killed in a car accident in 1959. And she was a singer, actress person. But yeah. So,
this weighed heavily on Sam, and he would leave for weeks at a time to go work. He was a womanizer. He was known to find himself in some questionable situations.
Yeah.
And even though he had this squeaky clean image on the outside, he was rubbing shoulders with people who might be willing to end his life for some sort of benefit.
He walked some gray lines, and Barbara, you can't be married to somebody and have a healthy relationship to them, and be totally clueless to what's going on in your husband's life at the same time. If your marriage is a little rocky or whatever, your relationship's got a little blurry edges there, then you start to question, like, hey, I wonder if something's going on. And Barbara wasn't a dumb woman, and started to think maybe some shady stuff was happening, but never really spoke out. And in that time, a lot of housewives and wives in general would not speak out against their husband. It culturally wasn't part of what was allowed, I guess, if you want to call it that. She saw him leave in the middle of the night and not come back until the morning or days later, and just didn't say anything. But, it was rough.
So we have these proponents now. We've heard the official story of his death. We know what the police say happened, what the official records say happened. We know what the jurors say happened. And we have this cast of characters.
But do you know who will never hear the story from what they thought happened? Sam Cooke. The big player in this game here. He'll never get to tell his story. You'll never get to hear his side of the story. But we should probably look at all of these characters in this story and dissect them a little bit more, just for a second. Just kind of recount the story with some other facts about them.
Let's start with Elisa Boyer.
Okay. So Elisa testified on trial that she met Sam at a, quote, Hollywood dinner party, end quote, and that he sang a song at the party and did not mention Martoni's or PJ's. So already under oath, on trial, on the bench, lied about how they met and where they met, and kind of left out some major details.
Right.
Interesting. And so Elisa, being 22, of Asian European descent, and you can Google images of her. Cute little spunky 22-year-old girl. May not be as cute and spunky as we had hoped she was.
Something I think is really interesting. So she doesn't mention these important details.
Yeah.
But she is saying that she's been kidnapped. However, they go to this motel, and Sam has to get out. He has to go register. He has to pay the hotel manager. He has to, fill out the forms.
And you got to put your information on there and your address. And remember that this was all recounted by Miss Bertha Franklin, the front desk manager herself, as well as verified by Elisa Boyer. They said the same story.
Right. And so he's in there filling out these forms, this paperwork, and she's just sitting there quietly in the car. Now, her testimony was that she had been kidnapped, and he's not looking at her if he's looking at paper, filling them out. She's out in front of this hotel.
And remember, Bertha did see her and said, you have to register as Mr. and Mrs. Looks over his shoulder and sees a woman in the car. And if she were being kidnapped, if I were being kidnapped, I would be trying to get her attention. I mean, first of all, I'd have left. I mean, it's a nice car, either taken the car or jumped out of the car, kissed it goodbye and ran. But you could at least wave or like mimic the words, lip the words, help or something.
Right.
Or point to him and say you're being kidnapped or scream or whatever it may be. But apparently she didn't do that.
And we'll talk about this in a moment, but it definitely would not seem as though this is Elisa's first rodeo going to a shady motel in the middle of the night.
Right. Plus, one thing to mention here, if it was Sam's intention to, have bad intentions with Ms. Boyer, why would he have registered under his real name? Especially obviously you recognize it's him, but on paper.
And by bad intentions, we're talking rape,
abuse, kidnap.
Yes.
You have a paper trail now saying, hey.
I think I might argue his intentions were still bad. This married man taking a questionable 22-year-old to a hotel in the middle of the night. Sure.
But to do bad things to this girl that he had just met that night.
Yeah.
Why would you put your name on a piece of paper, on a record?
Exactly.
He was drinking.
Yeah. So that brings up that's a lot of really great questions. And that kind of kicks off our series of things that make you go, So now, later in the evening, Elisa escapes the room, grabs her clothes, and according to her, accidentally grabs some of his clothes.
The pants, yeah.
But she grabs the pants with all the money that she had clearly seen him waving around while he was sitting with her at the...
Several feet away from her, yeah.
Yeah.
A wad of thousands of dollars of cash.
And this woman, we have reason to believe by her career choice, again, as we'll get to here in a moment, that she was in need of money.
Yeah. And by the way, we should probably note at this point that money was never found. And we kind of alluded that earlier, but they never found his credit cards. They never found the wad of cash. They just found $108 in a money clip that was in his jacket pocket.
And that's it.
So, where did that money go? I don't know. Did that money just happen to fall out of his pocket? And I don't know, whatever. Draw your own conclusions there. But,
1 month after Sam's death, Elisa is arrested for prostitution. And, if we haven't made it clear at this point, the Hacienda Motel...
The $3 special.
...was a place known for ladies of the night.
Yeah, and if you're running the front desk of a place known for ladies of the night, you turn your head when ladies of the night show up. You know the rules of the game. You know how it's played. You know what they're doing there. You just take their money and maybe a little cut of something else extra at the end of the evening. And you know how to put it in the books, and you know how to say, have a good evening, and let that be that.
So I think it's an awful convenient story for Elisa to tell that, oh no, I wanted to go home and he was just taking me to this strange motel. I think it's quite possible to believe that he may have paid her for her services.
He had already been known to enjoy women as well as alcohol. And at that particular time, he had both. And obviously money to spend. So maybe when she saw that at the restaurant, that he had the money, she offered her services, and he's like, done. And like I said, he was already 3, 4, 5 martinis in before his meal arrived, which he never ate. Whenever he was over at the bar grabbing more drinks with other associates, when they caught eyes and started talking. So that is a thing. But it's also very notable to mention that in 1979, a decade or two after this happened, Boyer was found guilty of second-degree murder in the death of one of her boyfriends. So it's not beyond her to be involved in something a little too shady, something killing,
right?
Planning something out, doing something more than prostitution on the illegal side of things.
So let's turn our attention towards Bertha Franklin, the hotel manager. who is the second key witness in this story and the one who literally pulled the trigger. She was by no means an innocent hotel manager just working that evening and was randomly attacked. She was an ex-madam and still had prostitutes who were working for her.
Yeah, like we said just a minute ago, you know what's happening in your motel. She wasn't the owner, but she was the front desk manager and knew. I mean, why does our hotel attract so many very good-looking young ladies? That's interesting. Every night, and they leave early. Oh, that's a shame. Must have somewhere to go.
We should charge hourly rates. So she had her own criminal record. She was forced to quit her job as the hotel manager because she had received so many death threats from Sam Cooke fans and associates and other people.
Starting to think that she did a little bit more than just self-defense.
Right. In fact, she even filed a $200,000 lawsuit against Sam Cooke's estate for punitive damages and injuries, but she lost $200,000. Now, this is a day and age where $5,000 equates to $50,000 in today's money.
So we're talking a couple million here.
Yeah, millions.
I did hear that she settled for like $30,000, I think, which is still $300,000.
A lot of money.
Equivalency, but I can't remember. I can't cite my source on that. I should have put it in the notes, but I didn't. But I did read that in one of the articles I was doing research with. So all that to say, Bertha is not just the mother, grandma, 55-year-old sweetheart, church girl, church lady, secretary type lady. She is. She's got a past. She's got a current history, and she's involved in some shady things already.
So she's got a gun close at hand because she knows what kind of hotel she's at. She knows the kinds of things that can take place.
Or maybe she knew what was going to take place.
And it's very possible. It's very possible that they even knew each other prior to this. Now, I find that a bit of a stretch.
Well, we don't know the conversation that happened in the Ferrari or the hotel or the nightclub. Maybe, and this is all speculation. This is straight up just making up ideas and thoughts and my opinion. But what if Elisa was like, I know a place we can go. I have a place we can go. It's not anywhere close to here, so don't worry about people finding out where we're going. Let's go down this way, and I'll tell police later. You know, she's thinking in her head that I was kidnapped, and I kept telling him to take me home. But he insisted on going 30 miles away. Whatever.
Maybe this was a place she took Oliver Johns. Maybe this is maybe she was a frequenter of the hacienda. Maybe Sam Cooke had never been before.
Maybe. Let's look at the wife, Barbara Cooke. Though her husband Sam's infidelity was nothing new to her, she also had some side action going on with a local bartender. Did you know that? Yeah, so on the day of Sam's funeral, and I found this really interesting, this particular bartender was seen wearing one of Sam's watches and his ring on the day of his funeral.
Wow.
That's how, I was going to say that's how much in bed they were together, but they really were in bed together. His wife and this bartender. And then a couple months after his death, Barbara had dumped the bartender and already married Sam's friend and backup singer. Remember this name earlier, Bobby Womack, getting him blacklisted from the industry. Because now, you know, his colleague and one of his best friends had just died. Now he's marrying his wife, his ex-wife, his whatever.
She didn't waste any time, but playing devil's advocate, she was, you know, if he was the love of her life, it doesn't really sound like he was, but neither here nor there. You know, when people are grieving, she needed someone there, and he was there to be a shoulder to cry on, and maybe it just was sparks. Maybe right off the bat.
She had apparently moved on a little quicker than I guess most people would expect. Very quickly.
Yeah. Well, Bobby Womack had other intentions, and Barbara allegedly found out that Bobby was sleeping with her 18-year-old daughter that she had with Sam Cooke.
Oh my gosh. That's jacked up, man.
And in 1970, she divorced him over it. Then her daughter wound up marrying Womack's younger brother,
Cecil.
Cecil.
That's jacked up.
and they formed the singing group Womack and the Womack and Woman,
Yeah, dude,
and had the hit single "Baby I'm Scared of You"
in the 80s. I remember that.
Finally, Bobby lost several of his kids tragically, as well as he ended up with a severe cocaine habit in the 80s.
That's
very sad story.
That is such an entangled web. Oh man, we're not all like that, by the way. Jeez.
So of course there's tons of theories surrounding his death.
Yeah, I mean, just shooting from the hip. A drug deal involving someone close to Sam, in which Sam tried to intervene. That's shown up on several articles I looked up. That like maybe this had happened and Sam was trying to help out with it or step in, and he got in the middle of something bad. Again, shady hotel, shady people. You never know.
Of course, it could have been a mafia hit. We know that they were very upset with him.
On different levels. So Sam did and said a lot of things that most black men wouldn't during an era that would have been too scared. You know what I mean? So he was saying things that most people said you shouldn't say and did things he shouldn't do. And he allegedly didn't pay for this gigantic poster of himself worth, or said to be worth, $14,000 at the time. When he did a live at the Copacabana thing, that he was supposed to pay for that, according to the mob/mafia who owned the Copacabana. Again, going back to that whole mob and mafia owning a lot of this stuff, having their hand in the money pit, they paid for this giant poster and said, you need to pay us for that. 14 grand for a giant poster. That's ridiculous. So he thought that they should pay for it. And he was approached by a few people in the industry urging him to pay for the poster, but he kept refusing. Alan Klein, which was his manager and accountant at the time, was helping him to get back paid royalties, and they were mysteriously withheld from previous record companies for free. So why is Alan Klein doing this stuff for free? It's weird. And then the record labels had to pay Sam 2 large sums of back money that Klein discovered was withheld. And he stopped paying for promotion, another thing that the mob required purchased through them, by doing his own booking agency and promoting agency and stuff like that. And then, mind you, it was unheard of at the time for a black man to do these things and get away with it. So he was trend-setting, groundbreaking, barrier breaking, doing all sorts of stuff, and also making a lot of people mad that he probably shouldn't. So it could have been a mafia hit. I agree.
And we know that the mafia they had no problems taking people out that were in their way. No problems at all.
No, there's several stories of that you could probably find online, a couple 100,000 of those.
Right. Of course, there's the belief that it could have just been a setup planned by Barbara Cooke, who was upset that he was out with other women all the time.
And had somebody lined up for herself.
Right.
Or several people lined up for herself and just wanted out.
Of course, this being in 1964, the tail end of 1964, we're right in the heat of the civil rights movement. The African-American community is standing up for themselves, and they're saying things have to change now.
Rightly so, too. Yeah.
Just right after, actually, Sam Cooke's death, his song, A Change Is Gonna Come, came out. And that's what it's believed that's what the song was about.
Well, side note, and a lot of people don't know this, a little trivia fact for you. There was a second verse on the song. There's only the first and the third verse, but we know that as the first and the second because there's not a third. There was a second verse that was omitted because the record company that he was dealing with said, you should probably take that out because it's a little too racy, no pun intended, for this time and where we're at. And it might not get you the traction you need because they think, oh, you're pushing a little too hard. And now think about it. You can go in Google and look up the words to it, but it was talking about, got a little too political. But Sam Cooke was a black man singing to a primarily white audience in person, a lot like JT was talking about the Crest doing. That if you watch the documentary on Netflix, if you read several of these articles, you'll read that he kind of changed the way that he was and the way he performed and the words that he's saying, catering to a more Caucasian audience than he would when singing to a predominantly African-American audience. And people at the time were calling it, you're singing whiter or being more white than black, whatever that means. But I mean, in fact, he recorded an album of a live performance at Harlem Square that was never released. He recorded it in 1964. It didn't come out until 1985.
Oh, wow.
Because they said, nope, it sounded too, and they could quote, too black, too soulful, too R&B. So they said that just sounded like, and columnists were saying something was different. There was a different energy that night when they reviewed his show. They were saying that people were into it differently. He sang differently. Not bad at all, just different. But they never released that album because they said that it was, quote, too black. Same songs, all the same songs, same set list, just the way that people interacted with them and the way that they were singing along or clapping. I don't know. It's kind of saddening, but you can find that on iTunes now. It was released in 1985.
Needless to say, he was making enemies on both sides of the aisle because there were white people who hated him simply because he was black and famous, and that was unfortunately I was about to say that was the time that they were in. I wish I could say that that's completely changed now, but it was much more predominant at the time. And then, of course, there were also black people who were upset that he was pandering to a white audience. Why aren't you being more black?
Yeah. If you're taking a stand for this, then take a stand for it. I don't know.
This quote here,
unfortunate.
From the 1960s, a woman says, quote, he was just getting too big for his britches for a suntanned man.
That's one way of putting it.
Saying,
suntanned man.
Black people shouldn't be famous.
Yeah. And he was walking out on some limbs that a lot of people thought he shouldn't be. But he wasn't scared, and he was taking risks and, like I said, breaking barriers. There's also have been a number of suggestions, though no proof has ever been provided in evidence, that Sam Cooke was targeted by music industry moguls with links to the mob after emerging as a social threat fighting for black musicians' rights. So not just for the monetary reasons, but just he's making too big of a wave. The mob didn't like it.
So was Sam Cooke lured into a trap at the Hacienda Motel?
Were Elisa Boyer and Bertha Franklin working together on this plot?
Was Barbara Cook involved somehow?
Or was it just a tragic accident?
So one interesting fact, Etta James, at last.
That's a huge claim to fame for her, yeah.
Yeah, a legendary singer. She attended Cooke's funeral, saw his...
One of them.
Saw his body because it was open casket. And she claimed that his body was ravaged in a manner completely inconsistent with the short scuffle reported by Bertha Franklin, that it was just he just fell on her and then she shot him and then hit him in the head with a broomstick.
She actually got to see the body before the public did.
Really?
I read that she got to see it kind of before the actual funeral service, before the big line of people showed up to see it. I guess because she's Etta James and can do what she wants. But she claimed that Cooke was severely beaten with broken hands, a broken nose, and severe head injuries.
Wow.
And that doesn't exactly line up with the recounted story from Bertha. But I can see how if it was just kind of underplayed, but man, I don't know.
Well, some people have even speculated that Cooke's manager, Alan Klein, might have been involved in Cooke's death in order to gain complete ownership of all of his recordings, because that was a big deal. Sam Cooke he was able to work out that deal with his record label to actually keep the rights, keep ownership of all of his masters, which was not only unheard of anyway, but especially for a black artist to do that.
In fact, so Alan Klein, the manager, had Cooke sign an agreement for a company he created called Tracy Limited, Ltd., named after Cooke's daughter, that would allow Cooke to be spared of IRS scrutiny, but actually greatly benefited Klein as the owner of Sam's work if he died. So Sam's wife, Barbara, ended up selling the remainder of Sam's work to Klein eventually too. So if Klein had, gotten kind of a big head over this stuff and was sick of some of Sam's antics or whatever it may be, or felt the heat from the mob or whatever it could have been, who knows? And he wanted to take it into his own hands and arrange this chance meeting, quote unquote. It's very possible that could have happened. And then he would get all of Sam's rights to his music. And then Barbara ended up selling it. Or maybe it's Barbara and Alan and the Schmidts were involved. Who knows? All these people could have been involved because it was Sam hanging out at the restaurant with music people, as well as a musician who introduced, which we found out later was a prostitute, to him, that maybe it was an elaborate story, elaborate plan that Alan Klein could have masterminded.
Or maybe Sam Cooke was a privileged young black man with a charismatic personality and the voice of an angel, who was used to always getting what he wanted, was out on the town one night with the money to spend and the world at his feet, and he sees a young, beautiful woman and thinks, I want that. You know, we know he was a womanizer. We know that he objectified women, that he was just used to getting whatever he wanted. Nobody ever told Sam Cooke no. And maybe he got really upset when she said no. Maybe she was on the verge. Maybe she was kind of thinking about it in the car. Maybe she wasn't sure, you know, maybe I'll do this. And they got up to the hotel room. She changed her mind, said no. And he wasn't taking no for an answer, so she freaked out. Maybe she did accidentally grab his stuff. Maybe she left it and a homeless man came and found his wallet and credit cards and took it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what happened. Maybe that's the truth.
Maybe he had a few too many drinks and he found himself in the wrong place at the wrong time.
So real quick to kind of wrap this up, there's potentially a lot of mystery surrounding his death. There's potentially no mystery whatsoever. And
there's potentially everything in between.
Yeah. And like you said, you put it so perfectly earlier, the side of the story that matters the most is the side of the story we'll never get to hear. And that's from Sam Cooke himself. But it does bring up another curiosity within my own mind. And that is, I recently had heard a study about why we as human beings are so fascinated with conspiracy theories and why you can just about pull a conspiracy out of any major situation. And it really stems out of this idea that these significant, potentially life-altering situations and, the death of a superstar definitely affected culture and society, especially such a huge proponent for the civil rights movement. And we just think there's no way it could have been that simple.
Yeah.
It has to have been something more. It has to have been something bigger. It has to have been a conspiracy. And that's not to say that there aren't conspiracies. I think the reason we go to that in our minds is because we know of conspiracies. We know that they happen. They still happen.
You find people who have been imprisoned for 30 years that never did the crime, and now they're being let out.
Yeah.
As well as people who admitted the crimes 30 years later, who never got caught. And as human beings, we are inclined to either assume the best in other people or assume the worst of other people. So depending on how you view Sam Cooke, like he would never do anything like that because he did so many good things, or that sounds like something Sam Cooke would do. And you search for more answers and you start jumping to conclusions and you look for ways to justify those conclusions. Personally, I don't know where I stand on this. I don't know if the government had anything to do with it, but I don't put it past them. They were corrupt and later found to be like proof of corruption.
Well, yeah, in the 1960s especially, that's when they were giving CIA agents LSD and all kinds of other things and trying experiments.
And then through the 70s and then even into the 80s with the Straight Outta Compton stuff. I mean, if you've seen that documentary, that movie, that film, that's very... pretty accurate on what was going on. All those things were happening in that area, and that's where this happened. And you can't choose your skin color.
Yeah.
Although I did hear in the news that someone is suing their parents for being born white. I think it was.
Really?
Someone's literally suing their parents for the color of their skin.
That I'm very white, and that just seems like a stupid white person thing. Like,
you're white. It's weird.
Caucasian.
Are you serious?
So it's part of the human condition, and I really think it kind of stems from our value of life. We value life. We see our life as special and unique, and when it ends, it's so. With the end of a life comes the end of so many things. All that person's memories and all of their experiences go with them.
Sure.
And so then you take someone that we've put up on a pedestal, like Sam Cooke or
Prince, Michael Jackson. I mean, you can fill in the blank with all sorts of people.
Right. And if you start looking, there's a lot of conspiracy theories about a lot. I mean, we've done an entire episode on conspiracy theories.
Right.
And a lot of them surrounding these deaths.
Elvis, where'd you go, bro?
Yeah, it's just...
Text me, tweet me.
It's because it's just this idea that in an instant, life can be gone.
It's true.
And it really... it is just true. It's just true. Sometimes there are absolutely conspiracies that happen, but obviously not every death is a conspiracy.
Right.
And as much as sometimes I think we'd like to think that they are, but
right.
It just kind of feels like when these high profile things happen, there has to be more to the story. It couldn't have just simply been he was being a moron and got himself shot.
Yeah. Why? That can't be it. Absolutely not. I am interested to know what you think happened, though. Where do you sit? Where do you fall on this conspiracy chart? Tweet us, text us, email us, fax us, snail mail us.
Fax me. I bet we picked up a big bag of those hearts, those candy hearts.
Conversation hearts.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
where'd you find? I can't find them.
Yeah, I don't know, actually.
The company, Necco, that makes them, which makes Necco wafers, rest in peace, went under. So I'm like, they're not making as many of those or any of those. They're probably, do they have to? They probably have them in warehouses from the 40s that they still just shovel them into bags because they never go old.
Just chalk with a couple of drops of sweetener and flavor.
You watch your mouth. I love those things.
Oh, they're amazing. I'm not.
Do you remember the ones that used to say fax me?
Yeah, that's where I was going with that.
Sorry about that. I just ruined your punchline.
The fax me ones don't exist anymore. That's text me.
They might still find them in your box.
if it's one of those.
If the shovel gets that corner of the warehouse.
I will use this platform to speak out against the sweet tart.
Thank you, Jake Jones.
Candy hearts.
Imposters. Those are imposters.
And they're gross.
They're nasty.
They got to be that chalky.
You need they need to be stuck in your teeth for at least 24 hours after you eat them.
You could use them to eat, or you could use them to write out a math equation at school.
They are good.
Do people still use chalkboards in schools?
I've seen some, yes.
Okay.
Very primitive, but I remember when that technology came around. But you can also use them to chip the ice off of your windshield if it's still cold where you live. Shout out to the West Coasters up in Pacific Northwest
Justin
right now.
Forshaw, yeah, posting all those pictures of the blizzards to 27 inches and
2
counting.
feet of snow. Yeah. And then all our friends up in the Maine regions, the northeast side. Man. But yeah, I'm interested to know where you sit on this. Is it a conspiracy? Is it not? Is it cut and dry? Were you around? Do you remember this happening? What was it like when that happened?
I'd love to chat with JT Carter about this as well, see what he thinks.
He did bring up Sam's name. Maybe we should get him on the phone and talk to him about that.
Also, Netflix, check out that documentary, The Two Killings of Sam Cooke, as well as shout out to Disgraceland, who have their own podcast.
I think it was their third episode was about Sam Cooke.
Yeah, check it out.
It's a good listen too.
Jake Brennan, he definitely makes it very clear where he stands on this matter.
You can still find the New York Times article online if you search for the December 11th, 1964 edition. And you can read the article that they published, which I read through. It's very interesting.
So check that out. Huge thank you to Real Sound Media for giving us this platform. Some big things coming down the road for Real Sound. Stay tuned.
Ooh, new podcasts.
What?
We should probably thank our patrons.
Of course, our patrons who make this possible from week to week.
You want a shout out? You can be a patron too. Before I name them, go to turneduppodcast.com. Upper right-hand corner, click on Become a Patron. Decide what kind of cool things you want, and then hit the Act Now button. I don't know what it really says there. Submit, Act Now. Submit sounds very empowering. Like, submit to us. But it's not really. It's just like submit the form. Enter your information, next of kin, blood type, social security number, all that kind of stuff.
Credit card numbers.
None of that.
All the credit card numbers.
Maybe credit card numbers. But for a very small amount, you get some really cool things, all the way to being able to sit in the studio with us, which we've had before and we'll have again. We're lining those up now. But special thanks to some of our new members: XOB Cry, Larry Annalise 7, Samantha Seeger, Jen Walter 1, Josiah 20, MD Biacco. I'm just going to Michael J83. I could go on and on and on. If your name didn't get mentioned this week, tweet me and let me know how much of a jackalope I am.
Jackalope. And I had a client in the studio this week, and I made her use my Turned Up mug. I love that mug. It's just my favorite mug.
Mine too.
And it's really cool. It's got our logo on the outside, and then the red side.
I like how the inside's painted.
Yeah, the inside is completely lined in red. It just looks so rad.
And red.
Makes my coffee taste better.
I don't know that it does that. I don't drink coffee, but my tea that I have in it tastes the same, but it looks cooler doing it. Not temperature wise, but it's cool. Thank you to all of you and the ones I didn't list. I appreciate you supporting us and actually listening to us in your ear holes.
Again, that's turneduppodcast.com, upper right corner, become a patron. Also, we want to hear from you. We want your ideas for a podcast episode. You never know when your idea is going to become an episode. We really use your ideas all the time because honestly, we want to make a podcast that you're interested in listening to. And we know that you'll be interested if we're answering your questions and letting you peek behind the curtain.
And before you get too scared, I'm like, Robert and Jake are running out of ideas. We're not. We have a huge list of things we haven't even begun to research yet. Like it goes on and on and on. We could scroll for days, like Strong Bad. The email. What the email? Homestar Runner reference. But we have tons of things. We just want to know what you want to hear because we want to make you happy. We care.
We love hearing your suggestions as well as your comments and things like, hey, you guys suck and Robert's really old.
Why is Robert so old?
So you can find us anywhere. Our handle on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook is all the same.
At Turned Up Podcast, or on Facebook, it's just / Turned Up Podcast. And we already gave you the website, but it's www.turneduppodcast.com. The W's are negotiable.
Let's become friends. Also on our website, there's a nifty calendar. So if you want to go back to a specific week for an episode, you can click on the calendar on our website and it will take you to the episode from that week. We release episodes every Monday and every once in a while on a Tuesday if we miss Monday.
Because we are in the music industry and punctuality is not our forte. But if you want something fun to do, you should go on to the iTunes podcast. It's the podcast app on your iPhone. If you don't have that, you can go to iTunes on your computer, click on podcasts, search for us, and just read through the reviews. They're hilarious.
And feel free while you're there to leave us a review. Of course, give us a 5-star rating. Doesn't count if it's not 5 stars.
That's right. Yeah, they'll kick it back and say, are you sure?
We got this recent one from one of our patrons, actually, Davin, and it's very funny. It says, it's a hit. I've known the guys since their first little-known venture together, Beard Pockets. Correction. Beard Pockets LLC.
Yeah, you have to have that limited liability corporation.
They've always had great chemistry, though their ideas are hit and miss. At least this podcast is a hit. If you want to learn more about Beard Pockets LLC, you can. I'm just kidding.
Go to beardpockets.us.
.gov.
What's one of those like .gov? But perfect.
If you're a .biz, join now. I don't know. Well, this concludes our episode on Sam Cooke this week. Let us know again. We want to know what your thoughts are on this. Is it a conspiracy?
Is it not?
Was he just being a fool? And take this month to reflect on how far we've come, but also how far we need to go as a nation.
There's a lot that's happened just to get us where we are now, and where we are now is not even where we need to be.
And as always, thank you so much. We love you, and until next week,
this is Nashville signing out.
Peace.